Welcome to People's Church Podcast.
Well, is there another chaotic week ahead of us? Of course there is. That's the good news. Chaos is not really our enemy when we know how to live during it. And most of your life is going to be filled with some chaos at some points. Markets took huge dives on Thursday, Friday, kind of putting everybody into a little bit of a shock. You might be somebody today that's, just kind of recovering from what transpired. Chaos is guaranteed to come to your life, and we've been covering that this is our 6th week, and the end of the intensive, how to live in this world of chaos with faith. I hope you've garnered some good things from this particular intensive. We couldn't have matched it up better with the titling and the studying and the preparation as the chaos has increased in our world. Can we get the nice sunlight coming in? I'm sunlight starved, so I need some of that, please. Thank you. Today I want to talk to you about the very important thing that you need. In fact, the most important thing. The Bible actually identifies this as the most valuable thing you can possess. What is that most valuable thing you can possess in life? Well, because life is filled with more questions than answers, wisdom becomes the most valuable thing you can have in life. We're going to talk about what that is. We're going to talk about how you go about getting it. How do you prepare your heart for wisdom? Because you need to prepare your heart for wisdom to really work in your life. Wisdom is critical to every question you have. It's not answers, it's wisdom. You say, I want an answer on this. No, you want wisdom on this. Wisdom means that it's not just a knowledge, it's not just a knowing. In fact, you may not even have a knowing. Wisdom is something that gives you application. It gives you insight. It directly matches whatever the question is to the answer. There's an absolute match in these things. Wisdom is something that all through Proverbs and other of our wisdom scriptures is identified and said, if you have this, you have the most valuable thing you can get. In fact, it says it's more valuable than gold or rubies or diamonds or wisdom. How many have questions today? You don't have to raise your hand. If you don't have any questions, well, okay, you just need to wake up and join us here. Questions. Life is filled with them. What do you do with your spouse in that season? What do you do with your children when you're going through that? What do you do with your finance when you're experiencing something that maybe just happened for you in markets, or maybe it's something else financially for you? How do you handle these things in life? What do I do with the things I can't control? What do I do with the things that are so difficult to change? And how do I move through change on something that I don't know if I'm willing to give up everything? We are filled with questions around very big subjects. You probably have some questions around very big subjects today. Well, what you need is not answers, you need wisdom. That sounds strange. You say, just give me an answer. No, you need wisdom, because God intended you to be the one that figures out some things, is able to, by His wisdom, put some of the pieces of the puzzle together so that your next actions you can take in very wise, very building, very healing ways. Wisdom. Wisdom builds good things. It is the most precious gift. It's valuable in business. In fact, I would say, I don't know how you can build a successful business without wisdom. It's valuable in families, in all relationships. It is this base commodity that, when it really shows up is when it's not there. And then somebody's making these decisions, and they don't have it based on wisdom. And all of a sudden you can just see it like a house of cards, just one little breeze. Just one little breeze. Jesus said, look, at the end of the great teaching of the Sermon on the Mount, look, Here's what I want you to do with what you've just been taught. You want to put it into practice. I want you to put it into practice. Now that's an interesting phrase. More or less he's saying, he is actually starting off by saying, look, it's possible to have all of this knowledge that I've just taught you, Jesus says, and you get no value out of it because you don't put it into practice. Because you don't take the steps that are necessary to actually draw the value out of the knowledge, to draw the best options out of the knowledge. Wisdom gives you the ability to milk knowledge it absolutely dry with good things. You can draw so much out of what you know when you use wisdom. Wisdom is I could say it all morning long. You cannot own anything more valuable than wisdom. How many here, and don't raise your hands again, but how many here would say, oh, I know, I have a wise person in my life. I know this one person, and they're in your tight circles, like around you, close to you. You know one that's really wise. They're consistently wise in their decision-making process. They are consistently wise in making good choices about big things in life. If you've got that, that's a gifted person to you. If you don't have that, you're missing a huge amount of good things. Just even one person that's got wisdom close to you is a great gift. A greater gift is if you possess wisdom. And you can. I'm going to show you how you can. I'm going to show you today what the Bible teaches us on that. But let's start off with this idea of the most important thing that you can do when you are in chaos. Well, the most important thing is this. Proverbs 4, verse 7. Getting wisdom is the most important thing you can do! Exclamation mark. It's the most important thing you can do. Wisdom causes you to actually respond in things and towards questions that you have that are big questions with the clearest of mind, with the strongest heart, with the greatest sense of patience and trust in God. And it takes you out of reaction and hiding. Wisdom is the ability to apply knowledge, experience, and good judgment to navigate life's complexities. It is often associated with insight, discernment, and ethics in decision making. Now, just to give you a little bit of a big decision kind of a story. I don't know if you heard this story before, but there's this woman. She awakes during the night to find that her husband was not in bed. She puts on her robe, goes downstairs to look for him. She finds him sitting in the kitchen with a cup of coffee, and he appears to be in deep thought, just staring at the wall. She watches as he wipes a tear from his eye and takes a sip of coffee. "What's the matter, dear?" she whispers as she steps into the room. "Why are you sitting down here this time of night?" And the husband looks up from his coffee. "Do you remember 20 years ago when we were dating and you were only 16? He asked solemnly. "Yes, I do," she replies. The husband continued, Do you remember when he shoved the double-barreled shotgun in my face and said, "Either you marry my daughter or I'll send you to jail for 20 years. "Yes, I remember that too," she whispered softly. He wiped away another tear from his cheek and said, "I would be getting out today." Sometimes we feel handcuffed to our choices. And sometimes we are. But maybe it's your lack of wisdom that's making that connection wrong. Maybe it's creating unhealth. Maybe you're the one that is not living in the wisdom of what you could do, what you could build, and what is important. Daniel, one of the great men of scriptures, it talks about him a lot. In Daniel 5:12 it says, he is a man who has a keen mind, a keen, sharp mind, and knowledge, and understanding. Another thing for wisdom. Daniel was taken as basically a teenager, as far as we can best understand the timelines. He was taken as a teenager and planted into the world government of Babylon under Nebuchadnezzar in a education program. We could say a re-education program. But he stayed in touch with all of the important things of his values, his faith, and who he was. He never let the complexities of his situation take charge of the plans. He had wisdom right from the very beginning and right to the very end. Wisdom elevated him right into the next hand to the world leader. In fact, 3 world leaders, both in Nebuchadnezzar, Darius, and Cyrus, who were world kingdom leaders. He walked with these guys. They depended on him. They called for him for wisdom. When we let things in our life stay untouched by wisdom, then all that we have is raw circumstance with a lot of questions and no solid direction and no solid responses. Instead, our emotions will lead the way, whether to hide or to in some way inflate, but certainly not to engage with wisdom. Wisdom is the foundation of every great decision you're going to make. And the more consistent you make them, the greater your wisdom. So let's start with a few things about how we go about preparing our lives for wisdom. First off, sharpen your mind. Sharpen your mind. Proverbs 10:23. Intelligent people take pleasure in wisdom. You say, well, I consider myself to have enough intelligence, and everybody in this room would have more than enough intelligence. But what we can do is we can sharpen our minds. Our minds can become dull. They're unexercised. They only go to the things of comfort, our strongest opinions, the things that are maybe not even that deep in life, but we want to go and talk about those things. You can waste a lot of time talking about things that aren't going to matter a week from now, 2 weeks from now, or a month from now. Or you can sharpen your mind and explore the big truths of life. You can, as a person of faith, explore your God, explore the scriptures, have great understandings of things that always last. You want to sharpen. Intelligent people take pleasure in wisdom. Why? Because you basically recognize through intelligence the value of what wisdom is. Proverbs 18:15 says, intelligent people are always eager and ready to learn. More or less, they always want to be on the learning curve. They're always asking questions. They are always wanting to learn from others, from other things that are just around them, the world around them. They're always asking questions. And they're asking questions because they love learning. If you lose the love for learning, you lose the ability to grow. Because growth is determined on the exercising of your brain. Your brain needs to have that fed. So how do you sharpen your mind? Well, balance. Make sure you have really good things that are in there that you are balancing out. It's not just all junk food. You are putting in there really good things. Make sure you do have times. I don't know how you can be healthy as a Christian without the scriptures, for instance. The scriptures are the fundamentals of learning for us, and also they become the authority for learning. Man, we're going through a really tough time financially. Well, I got a question for you. Do you know what the Bible teaches you about this? Do you understand what it teaches you about debt, about income, about God, about generosity on these subjects? Do you understand what the Scriptures says about these things? It's better to be the head than the tail, it says, for instance. And the tail's the person that's in debt to this degree that they have no power left, because the head wags the tail. There's a lot to be said on these subjects in the Scriptures to learn. Do you recognize that in relationships? That those relationships are the quality of what you're becoming first, not the quality of the other person first. It's you. You are the first one that determines the quality. If you're looking at the other person and say, well, our relationship isn't very quality oriented because of that person, you know who you're missing? You're missing you. And that's a lack of wisdom. Because you can understand more. Because God can give you greater insight into you. God can look and peer in places you don't even know yourself. He can bring to you awarenesses that you need so that you can function in what you are in, and so that you can then grow. God's wisdom will turn over the rocks under which are the hidden gems that you need. God's wisdom does that. So wisdom is absolutely, amazingly necessary. Tenacity. This is the ability to endure. This is the ability for you to really, really endure in life. Tenacity means I don't give up. Tenacity means when I grab it, I'm giving it my best. I'm not letting go. I've got the claws of an eagle in it. It's not going anywhere. Tenacity is, do not walk away from what is important. Tenacity means that this is worth the sacrifice and the cost because God is involved here. Tenacity keeps you from backing up in life to places that you don't want to go, like closed doors and closets. Most of the time, what we do instead is want to drive our own scenarios, our own story. And we drive only our own story, and we have already got this other person cut out of that story, and all we can think about is our own. This is so lack of wisdom. God's wisdom is going to only tell the complete story. Only the complete story. You don't have to be brilliant to be wise. In fact, sometimes the brilliant are very unwise. It's not the IQ that is wisdom. Wisdom is not your intelligence quotient. Some of you take those online tests and you get a number that's, whoa, look at that. And some of you take those and you go, whoa, look at that. That is such an incomplete way to measure what intelligence is. In fact, what you'll find is people that would have, sometimes we measure it by instruments, intelligence. So we measure it by thermometers, an IQ this high or this high. And we think it's by degrees. How many degrees do you have? No. Very, very much is, we would say, foolishness a part of this IQ or this IQ. IQ doesn't make you anywhere more wise. Because wisdom is a gift from God, not a gift you derive within yourself. You might have great knowledge in one way. Your intelligence might be built on a classroom. You're a classroom learner. But then there's other intelligences that are born more on experiential. So they're born by, put me in the shop, give me the tool, let me watch, I can do that. And they can take that to the nines where you can't. Intelligence is measured not by brain size. Intelligence is measured, really, when it comes to it, the application, how well you apply what you know. How are you applying what you know? Because that is where wisdom comes in. Sometimes we know things we never apply, and then we get the same cycles happening all over their game. And we keep these tunnels of chaos going on. Because wisdom is being kept outside, even though knowledge is on the inside of the door. Knowledge alone changes nothing. Wisdom can change anything. Wisdom. You know, when you're at night, if you're a business person and you're going through a tough time at night because your business is struggling, everybody's on the edge right now with you know, the shifting world, can we say trade rules? So everybody gets on edge about this stuff. And I know many of you, you're wondering, you know, what's going on? The uncertainty's high. All I'll tell you is you'll find no answers in just turning something over in your head. But I'll tell you this, that if you'll let God, and I'll show you how you do that, if you'll let God plant wisdom in your heart, in your head, you will walk through this and you will know what to do at every phase as you go through. God's wisdom leads us. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not, what's the word? Come on. Thank you. I knew you knew that one. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. You don't need to live in this world with, I want to know what to do. I don't know what to do. You wait on God and ask for wisdom. And God will give you wisdom. And you function by that wisdom. But there is some things you need to know about that. So intelligence is not this little deal of, wow, that person's so smart, they're so wise. No. No. In fact, I've heard a lot of measurements. I've even heard intelligence measured by the color of hair. Did you know that? Yeah, there's intelligence measured by the color of your hair. You probably heard some of these before. Of course, so in measuring intelligence, they started out with blondes. So here's what they did. What do you call it when you blow in a blonde's ear? A refill. That's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. But that's how silly it can get. But we can't leave the blondes out there, so the blondes fight back. They said enough is enough, so they started a whole bunch of redhead jokes. So how do you make a redhead? Well, how do you make the redhead eyes sparkle? Shining a flashlight in their ear. But that doesn't work either. Because all we're doing is thinking that somehow that is a way of intelligence. And then they go to another color. So the redheads fought back with the brunette jokes. How do you frustrate a brunette? By asking them to alphabetize a package of M&Ms. But then they all gathered together and fought back against the blondes again by saying, how do you know that a blonde has been using your computer? Whiteout on the screen. You say, that's bad, that's bad. I agree. And it's just as bad for you to think intelligence is wisdom. Wisdom is a gift from God. It's something we get simply because we pay attention to God. We're going to be diving into how do you do that? How do you get wisdom? The Bible actually tells us straight out. So what's a balanced diet? You got the blanks, I'll fill in your blanks here. First prayer, and then you got to feed your mind. Just run through them. Feed your mind. What's a balanced diet for the mind? Inspiration. That's probably not a lot of what you're putting in. By the way, the Bible is the most inspiring book in the Bible. It's the most inspiring book, period, is what I meant to say. Information. Your brain needs information. Be a learner. And here's one you won't expect. Your brain needs relaxation. You say, I'm good at that one. Well, I don't know. See, that means that you got to take a break. Your brain has to have the breaks from just turning stuff over. The brain is very complex. But where do you get wisdom? Proverbs 2, 6, and 7. The Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth comes knowledge and understanding. God gives you wisdom. From his mouth comes knowledge and understanding. So how do you prepare your heart? And this is where I want to spend some time here. How do you prepare your heart and mind to receive wisdom? Well, it starts with the testing of your faith, believe it or not. God's got all the wisdom you need. Every question that's rolled around your heart in this last week or this last month or this last year, God's got all the wisdom that you need. But he's going to start that process with testing your faith. It says, my brethren, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations, different temptations. Count it all joy. When you're falling into these kind of temptations, you're falling into these kind of trials, and you're going through some difficult things, just count it all joy. So you start with joy, largely because joy disconnects from the experience that you're in and connects to what God is, and that he is in control of these things, and you have a connection to God. Count it all joy that I and you have a connection with him when we go through these difficult things. Count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. We can't go on from there yet. You want to know the most important tool you need? Patience. Patience. Patience is this incredible tool in that it is basically based on I'm trusting God. I'm patient about this situation we're in financially or in our relationships or in my business. You are patient. When you're patient, you're trusting God. It's the surrender point of this particular formula God lays out for getting wisdom. And if you cannot be patient, if you feel yourself the drive to push ahead, to try and get that ball forward, and you're going to change this, and you're going to take charge, and you're doing this just all out of a panic and a fear within you, God's nowhere near that in bringing you wisdom. Fear will rob you of wisdom every time. It'll cause you to respond in ways that are going to be very destructive to you and potentially for others. Simply because you are struggling with God over that key word of surrender. Because we know we can't be patient until we are surrendered. Now, this person that he's talking about, look, you're going to be tested for your faith. And you're going to go through some tough things, but here's what your faith will work in you. It's going to work in you patience. And then it says, but let patience have her perfect work. What is he talking about? More or less, now, patience is the tool that God uses to bring you into this perfect work that he wants to do in your mind, in your thinking, in your emotions, in your choices. He wants to bring you that kind of strength of perfection from him. And he says that happens because you got patient. And then patience, that tool, have her perfect work that you may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing, more or less complete. You are not kind of a person that's incomplete. That would be immature. He's saying you're mature. You are complete. You're wanting nothing. You've got everything you need right now. You've got the wisdom you need. Oh, to have that confidence that you have the wisdom you need and you have surrendered enough to work God's wisdom and not your panic or your pride or your arrogance. How do you keep faith in times of chaos? Bring chaos under the supervision and the control of God through your faith being tested so that you can be patient in the middle of that testing, and God will work the perfect work in you. Testing, here's its needed results. Patience first, perseverance. Patience, perseverance. Resulting in you being mature and complete. Not lacking anything. perfecting of your faith. Now, if anything through the years, I guess I've seen repeated a lot in human cycles, is that we find it very, very difficult to be patient. It shows up in everything in life. And if we don't understand that to get patience, we must be in a test, and we must move away from self-centeredness, self-protection, survival, so that we can just trust God. When you can trust God, God will bring you the things that are not in your life right now. He will make your faith complete. Now, I want you to notice also in this, as we teach this part, that this is the first level of faith. There's two kinds of faith. They're both good. The first one in here is sort of the starting zone. It's like we saw in that video clip that they played, the first one. It's that boat. Jesus is in the boat. They're all panicking in a storm. He's sleeping. They wake him up and they say, "Don't you care that we're about to perish?" And then Jesus calms everything. He just speaks to it. Everything just goes boom. Waves go boom. Storm stops. And then he asks them a question. Where's your faith? It's a good question. I think it's a good question for you and I today. We're kind of in some storms. Some of those storms are shared. Some of those storms are individual. You're going to be in storms. Where's your faith? There's this kind of faith that's sort of the starting of faith. It's the igniter. It's like when Peter sees Jesus walking on the water in another storm, and he's looking out there, and they think it's a ghost walking on the water, and then they figure it out it's Jesus, and Jesus is saying, "It's I, don't be afraid." And then Peter says, "Hey, Jesus, can I come walking to you on this water?" And Jesus said, "Come." So he gets out of the boat, and he's walking on the water. And then he sees the storm, and gradually he's sinking. And as he's sinking, he cries out, "Lord, save me." He had enough faith to get out of the boat. Let's commend him. He had enough faith to take some steps on water. I don't think you've done that, and I certainly haven't walked on water. I thought about faking it one time and getting rocks just under the surface. It looks like you're walking across. Can't walk on water. Peter did. Then he began to sink, and Jesus is still asking him, "Where's your faith? Why is it so little?" Because there's another level of faith. And you can have this faith. You're going to see it right away. Perfecting your faith. If any of you lacks wisdom, answers to questions, real answers, wisdom, not just knowing something. Wisdom to have answers that are fully from the wisdom and from God's own heart and mind to you. If you lack wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. But now there's a word that says there's a condition. But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt. There was a guy that came along to Jesus one day, and he asked Jesus for a healing for his, I think it was for his son or whatever he asked. And Jesus said, "Do you believe?" And the man says, "I believe, but help me with my unbelief." Jesus still healed him. He healed. That's that first faith. And then there's a centurion, a Roman soldier, who he's got a sick servant who's dying. And the centurion sends to Jesus messengers that say, "Jesus, would you heal my servant?" And Jesus said, yeah, I'll go. So he starts on his way, and the guy sends him, no, you don't need to come, just speak the word. So Jesus just spoke the word. The servant's healed, and you know what Jesus said about that guy's faith? I have not found this faith even in Israel. What's he talking about? A whole different faith. A faith that is this, it doesn't have these gaps. It doesn't have all of these doubts shaping it. It's more than just starting up the bus. It's more than just starting down the road. This is a faith that has been perfected. He said, I'm not even, the centurion, I'm not worthy that you should come under my house. You just speak the word. I'm a man under authority. I get it. I speak, they do. Faith. It's required, this kind of faith, for wisdom from God. As long as you're depending on yourself and your own resources, as long as you're just hooked into your experience, as long as you're just learning by, the tough things of life, your experiences, you're well short of this kind of faith. Because there's a faith that's sourced only out of God's wisdom himself that he gives. But he's saying it's got to have this quality of faith. Because if you doubt me, how can I fill your mind and your heart with wisdom? Because you'll doubt what I say. You'll doubt my very wisdom. More or less, it'll do you no good. I could give you the best. It's kind of like casting the pearl before swine. It's like I'll give you the best wisdom, but because you're filled with doubt, you'll never enact it. You can't receive it. You can't do it. So our wisdom with God starts with shaping in our heart the ability to receive it. A faith that doesn't doubt, so that when he gives you wisdom, you follow through with obedience and practice. You carry it out. Listen to this scripture again. And he says, but when you ask, you must believe and not doubt. Because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Such a person is double-minded and unstable in all they do. Wow. Let's break it down a little bit. So you got two types of faith. You got the faith that kind of starts the engine, starts the bus rolling down the highway. It kind of gets the thing moving. And Jesus responds to that kind of faith. But then there's a faith, he says, that's the perfected faith. It gets to a point where you trust me more than your own wisdom, more than your own knowledge, more than your own abilities. You trust me outside of your own resource. You trust me, he says. You have that kind of trust? He says, I can fill that with wisdom. Wisdom. You don't need answers, folks. You need wisdom. Wisdom. It's available. What do I do in this marriage? You need God's wisdom. What am I going to do with this health situation? The wealth situation? You need God's wisdom. He said, well, I kind of asked. No, let's go back. Count it all joy when you fall into different temptations. Because they're going to take your faith and work it. And that's going to turn you and your faith into something of a faith that I can give you wisdom. Wisdom. Have you ever found those silent prayers going up and just, what do I do here, God? And sometimes God, with our hearts ready, it's as simple as he said, I won't hold back from you. I will give you that. You might be doing that in a business situation, a business meeting. Lord, give me wisdom right now, just praying inside. In my case, I might be in a counseling meeting and I'm in deep prayer, just inside saying, God, show me the wisdom track here. wisdom. It's really a simple process if the heart is not so closed off from the person of God so that he can speak into your life and you're not fighting him with your fears, your insecurities, your prides. If we're not fighting him with those things, if this guy's not fighting him with those things, then he can pour himself and his wisdom in and it can come. Chaos is given. We're winding this up on Wednesday night. But you really do need this wisdom. So where is it? What's the name of the kid? What's the name of the issue? What is it within you? You need God's wisdom. Now here's the beauty of God's wisdom. It heals. It does inform. It leads. It strengthens. It brings everything you need. That's why you are complete, lacking nothing. You are prepared for today. You are prepared. No matter what's coming to you today, you are complete, lacking nothing, because you've got God's wisdom's flow in your life, because you're not in the way. You have an obedient heart, a surrendered heart, so that God can give you wisdom in the moment of your challenge, whether that be this day, whether that be tomorrow, whether that be in the weeks ahead. You are prepared. One of my family members just went through a medical crisis in the last few weeks. They thought it was a stroke. It ended up not being a stroke, and so then the worst things come to mind. Is it cancer? First test seemed to indicate there was something there. I'm proud of my brother and his faith. He just stood in the gap. Keep the prayers coming, guys. Went through all the procedures. Kept his hope in God. Knowing him, it would have been many prayers going up. And we got a beautiful report how we have just a benign small tumor. What keeps us steady in these storms? Jesus' wisdom. If you could go back and follow Jesus for a day, just one day, if you could go back and walk with him on this planet, just one of those days that he lived here, what would you want to see? Normally our thing will go to the miracles. Boy, it'd be really cool to see that guy with the arm just kind of, but it'd be really cool to see Lazarus, dead and still choking on spices come out of the grave, It'd be really cool for us to see, when he healed that person that was a leper, 10 of them actually, and only the one came back to give him praise and thanks. It'd be really cool to watch that, but that is only a story you take through and you were excitedly able to see it. But if you really think about who Jesus is, what if you could in one of those days hear the teachings of Jesus on that day? And instead of just having a memory of some power moment, have wisdom that will last you your entire life. Because wisdom is more valuable than anything. So we're going to be closing with a prayer for you that you need to pray. You need to pray and say, God, I want wisdom. And I need to surrender more to you. I'm good on the startup faith, but I'm not good on this total trust thing. I still go to all my resources, what I know, and my capabilities to learn and study and Google. When what you need is His wisdom. So I want you to pray a prayer of wisdom in the close of this service that says, God, I want wisdom. Here's my prayer of wisdom. I want wisdom, and I'm willing to surrender and receive patience first. I'm stepping out of my own resource library. I'm closing up my own vault in this regards, God. They won't be the last stop. My last stop and my first stop is your vault. I'm changing where I'm looking for wisdom. You do that. And He says, if you lack it, I'll give it generously. I'll give it to you in full response. But you must believe and not doubt. Because if you believe and doubt, you must understand the mechanics. You can't receive the wisdom because the wisdom is tied to you obeying and doing it. So when He says, here's my wisdom on that relational issue, you're not seeing your part. You have disconnected from the anger and stuff that's in your heart. So my wisdom can't work until you're willing to really acknowledge that issue. Humble yourself. You have to be willing to be patient now and let me work. But let's start with you. Or on that area of health, well, He'll say to you maybe something like this. What you want is just a physical healing. What I want to give you is strength of faith and endurance so that you can live to the glory of God. Maybe when it comes to that child that's not working out so good in some of their current choices, that you've tried every tool you know from your vault, but it hasn't worked. At best, it may have made things worse. And He'll say, I just want you to be patient now. Step back. If you'll be patient, I'll give you my wisdom. But your impatience is in the way. It's controlling all the tools. I want my wisdom to control your tools. So I need you to be patient and to trust me. Whatever you are battling, the answer is found in God's wisdom. And if you learn how to tap into God's wisdom, you will end much of the chaos that you experience in a world of chaos. And you can have peace in the middle of everything going on around you. And you can choose joy when different temptations and trials are coming your way. And you can experience the ability to live above anything that this world is going to bring to you simply because God will give you the wisdom of how you do that, specific to who you are, where you are. Let's stand together. Father, as we bow our heads in your presence, we recognize you are the source of all wisdom. We also recognize that this world is filled with chaos, often of our own choices, others just the world choices, everything around us. God, there's all kinds of different forms of chaos in this world. It raises all kinds of questions for us. Why, who, when, how, and where. But God, there's a whole different way to do this. But it asks us then to trust you so completely as to not have doubt about your love and your control over that which is around us. It's a trust that allows us to be patient, so that patience can work its perfect work in us, your work, because our impatience stops you cold. Forgive us where we're impatient right now, taking over the reins, trying everything we can in our power to make that horse obey us rather than, Lord, just trusting you. God, I pray there'll be some spiritual revelation that will come by your Spirit into hearts today in the middle of the chaotic places we find ourselves. That puts us such a strong peace in us that, Lord, you are able to work in every situation that we face, and we get to see your hand work. God, help us to quit trusting in ourselves at the expense of not trusting you. So, Father, where there is impatience in our lives, we seek your grace. We confess it as something that's in the way. It's our own godhood trying to take over. And where there is a lack of joy, I pray, oh God, that we will get out from under our circumstances and get above it with the wisdom of God and trust you so that joy can fill our hearts. And where in our hearts there's still that doubt that keeps us from full disobedience, I pray, oh God, that we will learn to give away all of our resource that we might have yours, just like Paul said. I count all this stuff but just dung. God, we got lots of questions in life, lots of gaps, lots of need. Help us to realize that the number one need we have is your wisdom as parents, husbands, wives, business owners, workers, in every facet of our life. So in Christ's name, we thank you that you are there for us. And we ask you to bring wisdom into our current situation. Name it in your mind now. And God, I pray that as they name in their minds where they need your wisdom, that, oh God, you will now liberally pour out your wisdom. And they're going to have some of those aha moments as they begin to engage again with some of the tough things of life. Replenish us. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Thanks for listening. If you find this program helpful or would like to learn more, please give us a call, 780-539-0572, or email mail@peopleschurchgp.com.